a number of recordings that are quick overviews of using the strategic analysis templates. The purpose of the templates is to provide you with some structure to help with your analysis. The videos are about the nuts and bolts of using the templates. They're not about the theory. So the videos will make more sense after you've done the relevant readings and watched the relevant videos on the subject. Okay? Here we go. Hi folks, Jonah Latta here. This video is going to provide you with an overview of using the General Environment Template, sometimes called PEST or GD-PEST analysis. Okay, so for the General Environment Template, you have three columns: the environment, threats, and opportunities. So what you want to do in doing case analysis is look for a case fact about changes in the macro environment. Right, so these are going to be facts. Right, so it's going to be the different segments of that general environment, this macro environment, are economic, demographic, political and legal, technological, sociocultural, and global. So examples would be the dot-com bubble or the dot-com burst, the 2008 housing crisis, all examples of the economic changes in the economic environment. All right, and those events provide threats and or opportunities to companies, right? Another example might be the passage of the Affordable Care Act, right? So that would be in the political legal segment, right? And that provides threats to some companies, opportunities to other companies, right? Socioculturally, you can think that we as a society, there's a trend towards healthier eating, healthier lifestyles, right? And so for some, that provides threat, and others provides an opportunity. All right, so you're looking for those case facts that are macro kind of case facts, but you're doing this relative to a specific company, right? So you've been hired to do some analysis for a particular company. So whatever that case fact is that you come up with or that you've identified, you're going to then analyze that fact and say, how is that a threat and or opportunity to the company and or industry in which that company operates. Okay, so that's the analytic piece of it. And it's not that there is always a threat and always an opportunity for each specific event or specific macro issue that you've identified, but you have to identify what the relevant issues are. Okay? So the biggest issue that I see in people doing this analysis is in the level of analysis of the issue, the environmental issue that's being addressed. All right, so this is not when you're identifying a change in the technological environment, it's not about the company, the changes in the company's technology. It's about changes in that macro environment and how that impacts the company. Okay? All right, so that's it in a nutshell. And lastly, you'll notice down at the bottom here in the notes section of the PowerPoint that there are some guidelines there to help you as you go through that analysis. Okay, that's about it. Happy analyzing. Hi folks, Jonah Latta here. This video is going to provide you with an overview of using the Industry Environment Template, sometimes called Porter's 5 Forces Analysis. Okay, so for the Industry Environment Template, you have 5 boxes: bargaining power of suppliers, rivalry between competitors, bargaining power of buyers, threat of potential entrants, threat of substitutes. So those are the 5 boxes that essentially encompass Porter's 5 forces. On the template are also provided for you some process steps for going through that analysis. Okay, so Porter's 5 forces is intended to help you assess the attractiveness of an industry. In other words, is it on average a profitable industry or not so profitable? Okay, so the way to use the template is you start with identifying the industry or the business segment. Only once you've done that can you really say, these are the boundaries of the industry. And then you know who the competitors are in this middle box here. Right? So you start with identifying the industry boundaries, and then you start identifying the players. All right, so the competitors are going to be those who are competing in the industry that you've identified here. Once you do that, you can then start filling in who the buyers are, who the suppliers are, what the potential substitutes are, and who the potential entrants are. Okay, so that's just identifying the players. That isn't really doing any of the analysis yet. So once you've identified the players, then you're going to be thinking about analytically about assessing the threat level and the bargaining power and the rivalry. All right, and so you're going to be using course concepts and the case facts to do your assessments. Okay, so you can imagine that having access to information, so buyers having access to information, helps us as consumers have more bargaining power when we go to buy a car. All right, so access to information or lack of it will impact the bargaining power of buyers. Switching costs impact the bargaining power of buyers. So you're going to do that for all of the 5 forces, right? And so you're going to be using those theoretical concepts that you've gained from the readings and from the course slides, right? So here's a slide that may help you, right? So these are some of the concepts that impact bargaining power of buyers, some of the concepts that impact bargaining power of suppliers, right? Same for threat of substitutes, entrants, and rivalry. All right, so this is where your analysis is coming in, right? So you're doing that for all of the 5 forces, and then once you've done the assessment for the 5 forces, you're going to come up and identify the attractiveness of the industry, right? Your final assessment of the attractiveness of the industry. And then what are the implications for the firm that you're doing your analysis for? All right, so if we kind of go through the process steps again, you're going to identify the industry or segment boundaries. You're going to identify the players in the 5 forces. You're going to assess the force itself using case facts and course concepts, or Porter's 5 forces concepts. Then you'll make a final assessment of the industry using the assessments that you have for the 5 forces. And then finally, identifying the strategic implications for the firm. Okay? And again, lastly, there is some guidance down here with those process steps in the notes section of the PowerPoints. Okay? That's it. Hi folks, Jonah Latta here with a quick overview of using the Internal Environment Template, sometimes called the Resource-Based View or RBV analysis, or VRIS analysis, or VRIO analysis. They're all getting at the same thing, which is understanding how the firm's internal resources and capabilities provide the firm with a competitive advantage and for how long, or whether the firm's resources and capabilities don't provide the firm with an advantage. Okay, so for the internal environment template, you have a table. You start by identifying the firm's internal resources and capabilities, not the firm's products. Products are an outcome of putting a bunch of resources and capabilities together. You want to analyze the underlying resources and capabilities that produce these products. So in doing so, you identify the resources and capabilities in a way that is specific enough that it doesn't fit any other company. Once you've identified those capabilities specifically enough, then you will evaluate them on the 4 criteria: valuable, rare, costly to imitate, non-substitutable. Once you've done this analytic assessment of the firm's resources and capabilities, then you're able to identify for each resource and or capability the competitive consequence. So what do we mean by that? This next slide will be helpful in determining that competitive consequence. So when a capability is valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and non-substitutable, then it provides the company with a sustainable competitive advantage and above average returns. When the assessment is it's valuable and rare, but it's easy for others to copy you, so it is not costly to imitate, then it just provides a temporary advantage, an above average to average returns. Similarly, if a capability is valuable and rare and it is non-substitutable, then it also provides the firm with a temporary competitive advantage and an average to above average returns. When a capability is valuable but not rare, in other words, other firms possess that same capability, then the best the firm can be is even, and the consequence is competitive parity, on par with other firms, and the implications are average returns. When a capability is not valuable, nor rare, nor costly to imitate, nor non-substitutable, it provides the firm with a competitive disadvantage and below average returns. So this slide is helpful in identifying the competitive consequences from the assessments that you've provided. Okay, so to summarize, you're going to identify the firm's resources and capabilities in a way that is specific enough that we know what company it applies to and that they are not products. Once you've identified the capabilities, then you assess each capability on the 4 criteria: valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and non-substitutable, and then you provide the competitive consequence. And finally, you identify the strategic consequences or strategic implications for the firm of your analysis. Okay? And lastly, note that there are guidelines down in the notes section of the PowerPoint slide for this analysis. Okay? That's it for internal analysis. Here with a quick overview of using the value chain analysis template. This framework is used to analyze the firm's activities to determine which add value and which don't. This template uses both a figure and a table. We'll start with the figure. This figure is a generic figure used to illustrate the value chain. It represents all the activities cradle to grave to make a particular product or to provide a particular service, as well as the support activities to accomplish this. But firms don't necessarily participate in all parts of the value chain. For example, a firm might outsource its IT support, or maybe its payroll processing, or its manufacturing. So each firm's value chain activities are unique and may focus on a particular part or parts of the value chain. So this figure should be customized for each firm. This value chain assessment table is used for your analysis. This is where your analysis really comes in. The first column in the table lists the value chain categories. In the second column, you should identify the value chain activities for each category, and then evaluate each activity as superior, equivalent, or inferior to competitors. You should note that Some activities do add value to the firm, in which case the firm will likely want to continue investing and developing these activities. Some activities could add value, but may be underperforming, and the firm may want to invest in them to turn them around. And some activities don't add value to the firm, and the firm may want to consider outsourcing them. Based on your analysis and rating, you should develop recommendations. So your analysis, in other words, your ratings and assessments, are key to determining your recommendations to the firm. Lastly, please note there are some guidelines down in the PowerPoint notes section of the template to help you. Okay? So that's it for value chain assessment template. Hi folks, Jonah Latta here with a quick overview of using the generic strategies template. Sometimes it's called business level strategies or a cost leadership versus differentiation strategies. They're all getting at the same thing, which is understanding how the firm positions itself in an industry relative to its competitors. This framework is essentially a modified 2x2, with one dimension identifying how the firm creates a competitive advantage using a cost leadership or a differentiation strategy, and the other dimension identifying the competitive scope or the markets that the firm is targeting. I tend to think of this framework as a deeper dive into the middle box of Porter's 5 Forces industry analysis. That middle box being the competitive rivalry box. So just as the first step in Porter's 5 Forces was to identify the industry or the business segment, you need to do the same here. After you've identified the boundaries of the business segment or industry, you need to identify the position in the industry of not only the firm you are analyzing, but also the firm's competitors. That way, you may see the similarities and differences in their strategies. Are they targeting the same or different markets? Are they using the same or similar approaches to achieving a competitive advantage? You also need to provide qualitative and quantitative evidence to support your analysis. The most common issues I see in using this framework is not including the competitors in the analysis and not identifying the firm or the competitor's competitive scope. While the framework is a 2x2, it may be helpful to think of the two dimensions along a continuum, from a very much cost leadership strategy to a very differentiated strategy, and from a very small niche market to a very broad market. And next, you need to identify the implications of your analysis. Lastly, please note there is some guidance down in the PowerPoint notes section of the template to help you. Okay, that's it for generic strategy.